Good evening, Fergus. How are you today?
Finally, I'm fantastic, thank you. Went to the doctor today, rode my bicycle today, had lots of fun stuff today, which I'm very happy to share with any audience, because this is all about how to work the audience.
Absolutely. And how to deal with hecklers.
Hecklers are wonderful. They're one of the best things that any speaker can have. And I'll tell you why, because it's how to work the audience. Right.
Absolutely.
And I heckled our mutual friend, Michael Risner. I heckled him a few days ago, and he heckled me back because he's been at it for a long time, yeah, like me. But he heckled me back. He said, "There's Fergus. I taught him years ago, and now look at me, and now look at him." So, oh, that was a good line. So he's very happy with hecklers, and he's a very high-level speaker, very successful all over the world, and you can't heckle him into a place of pain. You really can't, because there is no place of pain for Nigel Risner, and there never was. And he's very successful. I'm talking for everybody, actually. Using him as an example just at the beginning, and he won't mind being used as an example. It would make his ego as big as his belly, basically, which is pretty...
nicely round.
Nicely rounded with lots of ice cream. Anyway, because he said that the other day, so I can say that as well. Okay. When you're feeling good about yourself and you work well with the audience, then you get more audiences. And Nigel has been very good for executive audiences who are very, very, very picky. I know, because I've worked for Academy for Chief Executives 3 times. The first time was brilliant. The third time was brilliant. The second time was a disaster. And it was because I didn't know the audience properly. Right, I'll tell the story, which is another way to work with an audience, how to wow the audience. I spoke to an audience of executives, and there were about 18 of them in the room. I didn't know that 6 of them were going to be women who worked for a social housing group and who are very into themselves, to say it in the most polite way, right? And so I was talking about the stuff that my friend Alan Pease talks about, which is the differences between men and women, and John Gray talks about, and they are true. There are lots of differences between men and women. And everybody who's listening, remember, men mostly do what's called report speak, and women do rapport speak. So
direct emotion.
Yeah, I suppose so. So if you're only a woman, Cindy, be quiet. That's what men do. And you know that thing, Cindy.
You don't know how I'm feeling about this.
Well, I don't care. Anyway. I'm giving some details. No, this is good. This is a good interplay. And that's why... Okay, right. We've all heard the myth. I've got a fantastic book called Language Myths, right? And it's very dense. And it's long treatises written by 12 different professors. And one of them is all about how women are supposed to speak more than men. Now, this is important for wowing an audience. So listen, everybody, don't get bored. Call your friends in, because this is really important for everyone if you're doing a speech. Because it isn't true. Okay? It's a myth. Women don't speak more than men unless it's 2 women speaking together. Because if a man's there, he will take over, which I just did in a false way with Cindy. And
it's only because I let you.
Yeah, but you did. That's the point. You did let me. And if you watch on TV series where you've got a man and a woman presenter on a couch, right, interviewing people in the morning on a morning show, the man will take over, the woman will say a few lines and keep handing it back to the male presenter, because that's what women are like. And in boardroom meetings, there was one where a woman was starting to say an idea, and a man on the board said, "Stop it, Mary." I don't know what her name was, but if it was Mary, sorry, Mary. But "Stop it, Mary. I know, I'm going to explain what Mary's saying." And she hadn't even said it. Yeah. He gave his idea, and she just sat there quietly.
Oh, and I don't do that, because I do butt in, and one of my biggest problems is that I get told off for not giving other people enough time, but my brain goes so fast, it's like, I've got to say it now, else I'll forget. And I just...
Well, you're a high AD, as they say in NLP, audio digital, which is the fastest speaking, thinking person in the universe. I'm an auditory. So, and I'm secondary visual and kinesthetic, so I'm all 3. But you're an AD, and I've never been an AD. And if people want to study NLP, that will help them when they're speaking. However, how to wow an audience, let's keep on that, which I am actually. Yeah. Right. You've got to think that some in your audience might be female, some may be male. The first thing you need to know is who the audience is. Like, are they 100 executives? Are there 100 coaches? Are there 100 hypnotherapists?
Which is a box standard question when you're actually asking about the audience details.
Yeah, and when I was talking with Nigel the other day, just before he did his presentation, and let's face it, he's been around a long time and he's a very successful speaker, and it was before he did his presentation, and he'd seen something at the Professional Speaking Association convention this year, which totally, a presentation, which totally fitted with what I've already said on some of these. Like when you speak to a prospective person who's going to book you to do a speech, you say, okay, who are the people? What do they want?
Absolutely.
What are their needs? And you get to know the people. And the time I got it wrong, I didn't know that a third of my audience were women who worked for a social housing group and thought that men and women were exactly the same. And that didn't work because it's not true. But that's what went wrong. And so you've got to think, okay, who is the audience? What do they want? And hecklers, God, I did a speech years ago and I had to announce that someone was not coming on stage. And who 450 people had paid to come and see.
Ouch.
And I said, well, there's somebody else who's going to speak on their behalf. And a man right at the back started complaining. Oh, he always does that. This is a con. And so I, on stage, as the MC, had to say, look, I understand why you're saying that. And I'm sure a lot of you people are thinking that. However, he's willing to meet up with you after the event, but just due to his contract, he can't come on stage this evening. But he wants to meet you this evening after the presentation. He'll be coming round to meet you at the stage door, as it were, and you can go back to his hotel room and talk to him. And also you can speak to him tomorrow morning and sign up for his stuff. Yeah, well, I didn't like that bit. I didn't say that bit, but that's what was actually happening. However, what I had the chance to do with the heckler was to go into more detail about why the person couldn't be there. That's why hecklers are useful.
So
and also, you've got to think, if a heckler's saying something, there are probably a lot of other people in the audience who are thinking it, they're just not saying it. And it gives you an opportunity to expand. Like, for example, I've got to tell you another story, because another thing about good speaking and keeping an audience wowed, excuse me while I cough, had a bad cold. Right. Another way of keeping them wowed is to tell them stories to make them understand where you're coming from. So here's another heckler. I was doing a presentation to about 60 people, that was all. And it was for a sales team. And as I started to speak, one man in the audience said, I don't buy it. Right, very loudly. Mm-hmm. I said, well, that's good, because I'm not selling you anything. And he looked a bit shocked. I said, look, I'm going to give you some exercises to help you to present and to help you understand how to do presentations this evening. Can you please speak up every time you want to? Because I think it's great you've spoken up with your thought. And as time goes on, your thoughts, your feedback will be very useful for the entire presentation. And he nodded meekly. I didn't shout at him. And all the other people thought, oh, Fergus is so nice. He's willing to take the feedback from a heckler and to work with it. He didn't say another word for the whole 45 minutes I did my presentation.
Oh, excellent.
Excellent. He knew. And then at the end, he didn't come and speak to me at all, but he spoke to the person running the event and said, actually, I did buy it. I did buy everything he said. Because and every now and then I'd say, can you do it? Whatever his name was, because I asked his name as well. I said, can you just do this exercise with the person next to you and let us know if you've got anything to say about it after you've done the exercise? He didn't, of course. And so that's what you do. You get the audience to think, this person is sharing something with me. And I've just shared 2 stories, okay, from my speaking events to explain how to work the audience. The next way of working the audience, I hope people have taken notes. If you haven't, you'll be able to listen to the recording and watch the recording. And as Nigel would say, don't take notes, take notice. But lots of people were taking notes the other day, as usual. And he said it as usual. But the point is that you take notice of things and act upon them. And a lot of the best speakers in the world want people to take notice and act upon what they're seeing and hearing. Mm-hmm. And so one of the best ways to work an audience is to have a very integrated story. Your whole speech, your whole presentation has to be a very hard-hitting story.
Are you talking about stories like Ronnie Corbett tells, where you've got like the big story with lots of little stories all the way through it, and you finally get to the punchline after the end?
Sort of. Yeah, the punchline is a very good one. Okay, that's to do with back referencing, okay, and building to a crescendo, like the best. And you and I, or certainly I was speaking to a woman on Blab the other day who's, hi the Hoggle, whose husband is a comedian, a stand-up comedian. If you think of the best stand-up comedians, America, England, Australia, they'll be telling a story in which episodes happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if they make it even better, they'll do a back reference. So let me very, very quickly talk about briefly, to illustrate this point, a story by Mickey Flanagan, who's a London comedian who's actually highly educated. He used to be a school teacher, but he now talks in a really strong Cockney accent. Okay, right. He does that, which I won't do because the Americans and Australia, well, the Australians will understand it. The Americans, bless you all, you will not understand it if I use that accent. But this accent works for you very well, doesn't it? Anyway, so Mickey Flanagan was telling a story about dating. And he said that he'd gone to a woman's house and he didn't know her name. He woke up in the morning, he didn't know her name. So he said, I'm not stupid. I went downstairs and I looked at all the posts on the table next to the door. He said, I ignored the ones that said the occupier and things like that. And I just found the ones that had her name on with the first name. So I was able to talk to her. Okay. So then he moved on into a totally different story about dating with his soon-to-be wife, which was extremely funny. And then he says, so later on, I took her to Nando's. Now, Americans, Canadians won't know. Nando's is actually, they make very good chicken, but you have to choose your chicken.
It's a chicken shop.
It's a chicken shop. Chicken shop, really.
Chicken restaurant.
So he said, I wanted to take her somewhere really posh, really expensive, really, special. So he took her to Nando's, right? I said, so he said, I wanted to ask her to marry me. So he said, so homeowner. That was it. That was a back reference to having missed all the letters, all the letters he'd had earlier. He'd obviously forgotten the name. Now, of course, it's not true. But what he did, he brought it back to the story about all the letters on the table earlier in his speech. 20 minutes later, he suddenly called her homeowner. And that's the power of back referencing. Of course, the audience fell about with laughter, because they knew what he was talking about. And so you're saying about having a story that builds to a final point. Yes, but you also need to think about having little points every now and then and back referencing them. Yeah.
That's very hard for quite a lot of speakers, because that's actually real crafting of your script, really.
Yeah, and then throw the script away, basically.
Yeah, and actually,
yeah.
But then actually then getting to grips totally with your script and totally at ease and relax with it, that you can play within it, knowing exactly that you've got to bring the points in.
Yeah.
And keep that step going. And I find that most people do actually drop out part of the script.
Yeah.
And most of them come off the stage after saying, I forgot to mention this, or I forgot to mention that.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if you forget to. I've come off lots of times. I thought, oh, I left that out. Which
is fine, as long as you're not building a script and sort of like crafting from the intricacy of the story.
That's the thing. What I do, I train people to speak, as you know, all the time. Mm-hmm. And what I get them to do is script out their story, then reduce it to bullet points, then sort of learn the bullet points, tear the paper up and throw it away. Because then they have to live it.
Yes.
And also there are, let's face it, how to wow the audience. There's a huge amount of stuff you need to know to wow an audience.
But you need to come back to one very good point that you said right at the very beginning, which is actually taking good notes of who it is you're going to present to.
Yes, definitely.
Because in my bureau days, it's one of the things that was drummed into us is find out why they're there, who they are, what they're trying, who the event organizer is trying to attract to go there, and why they need to be there. And the ultimate line that I used to add in is, what is it you want your audience to take away?
That's a very good point, because another thing that I learned from, I have to say it was my ex-wife many years ago. I hate saying that, but it was, right? It was one of the things you say to someone who's going to book you as a speaker or wants to book you as a speaker, you say, what will tell you that my presentation, my speech has been successful? What will tell you that? What will you get from it that you think this has been successful? And then they have to think about it. Well, if you do this and this and this for my clients, then, or my audience, oh, great. They just told you exactly what to do. They don't know that, but they've told you exactly and you just do it. Because if they say, well, what I want my sales team to do is be more motivated for the company and less argumentative. So if afterwards they're working well with each other better, then I'll be happy. Or it might be completely different. They might say, well, I want them to be more focused on selling. So if after your presentation they're much better on the phone and getting more bookings, then I'll consider it successful.
Yeah.
And so you think, okay, this is the angle I need to take my presentation.
Which also means that if they've just given you the answer and you still can't do it, then you have to be, well, man enough to actually turn around and say, sorry, this booking is not for me.
Yeah. And I had a would-be client once, okay, and also I was in the position of booking speakers for an organisation. Cindy knows about various organisations I've worked for over the years. It's not one you're thinking of, actually, Cindy. It's another one from earlier on. Anyway,
you later.
I went to watch somebody do a presentation to see if this particular person would be good enough for the audience for this particular very spiritual personal development group. So it's not the PSA, thank you. Right.
I wasn't thinking that one.
Oh, you were thinking of the other one then. Anyway, let's say yes to this, okay? Let's say yes to this. Right. So I went to watch this woman do a presentation. And as you went in the door, obviously I was about to book her for something, so I wasn't going to pay. And she was asking everybody to pay £10 to watch her speak.
Oh.
Okay, fine. I thought, well, hang on, she's only speaking for half an hour at a friend of mine's house. And she's doing a presentation for about 40 people. So in the middle of her presentation, she said, so any of you who don't pay your £10, which will go to children in Africa, she kept saying children in Africa, right? Somebody once didn't pay their £10 and they broke their arm the next week. So, you know, it's got to come back on you. So you've got to think, you know, are you going to pay your £10 tonight on the way out if you haven't paid it already? Or are you going to not pay it?
Oh, I think I'll be tempted to just get up and go.
I waited to the end. No, I had to wait to the end because I was watching her, and I walked up to her and she said, "You're not going to book me for that organisation, are you?" I said, "No, I'm not."
No, I wouldn't.
And you're not going to train me either. No, I'm not. I could have trained her in some. The word lethal is wrong, actually, but I could have trained her in a lot of very high-powered sales techniques and how to get herself across. Having watched where she came from, I refused. There's no way I was going to train her. And honestly, I have to say, if she'd offered me a huge amount of money to train her, I have to say, honestly, I couldn't have done. I'm not being a god or a hero. I just couldn't have done it because I'd have known she'd be out there harming people. So I couldn't do it. So you've got to think about who you speak for, who you speak to, and what are you giving to your audience? Whatever your speech is about, it doesn't matter. Mine is all about communications, body language, voice, voiceover, storytelling, all that sort of thing. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It could be finance. It doesn't matter. But do they deserve it?
Absolutely. I was going to say, the one thing that I know with working with you in the past and also working with you currently as well, that you're all about the content and it's giving them the experience. And that's the one thing I can say with an audience. Those that are happiest are those that feel they've got some real life-changing moments and life-changing information that will either change themselves or their business or what it is they're trying to do. Yeah. And that for them is what makes them being in the presence of a great speaker and a person who's just worked an audience quite well. Yeah. However, if you get the other type of speaker, which is trying to sell to the audience, then that's when the audience is kind of very turned off, very anti, very disappointed, not just with the speaker, but also the event organizer and the event itself.
Yeah. I mean, there's a mutual friend of ours, Richard McCann, okay? He's a professional speaker. I gave him a lot of training as he started his speaking career. And he's done hundreds and hundreds of speeches. And his whole thing is, I can, so you can, Richard McCann. Okay? Now, it's corny, but it works for him. And he's devoted to doing it. He goes into prisons, he goes into schools, he does lots of free speeches, gets lots of paid speeches. He probably does 200 speeches a year. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's a brilliant speaker. I really don't. I'm saying it honestly, and I've said it to him. and I've given hints and tips as well as having trained him in his early days as a speaker. However, he's a very successful speaker because he cares passionately about what he's giving, and he really wants to share it, and people in the audience get it, even if they're in prison or a young offenders institution or an executive group or a multi-level marketing company. They all go, wow, he's so passionate, and he's giving us some stuff about feeling better, because his thing is feel good. Mine isn't, but his is feel good. And so he works on the feel good factor, and his background story is very dramatic. I mean, it's amazingly dramatic. I won't go into it at all.
No, but then, as you quite rightly said, though, because you're passionate about your subject, he's passionate about his. Yeah. You're not trying to sell from the stage.
No.
But because you are passionate, I find that is an extremely good way of working the audience, because they're getting passionate with you about your topic.
Yeah, thanks, MRTN, presumably Martin. Yeah, it is. It's people get in. Okay, I could show you my bookshelf of books on psychology and communications, and there's loads of them.
Is it that big one that left behind?
The big glass one? Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
The big glass one. Okay, look, everybody. Can you see it?
The big glass one. Yeah, we can see it.
Apart from the classical literature, nearly every book in there is psychology of communications. And why? Well, because I care about that stuff. And so, as I've said to you before, I've said on other blabs and other people's blabs, I could speak non-stop for 24 hours, which I normally do, but I could cover lots of different things because I've got a depth of knowledge. And what Rachel Resnick said in one of her speeches on Blab a week or so ago, she said the difference was between speaking wide and speaking deep.
That's me as well. Inch wide, mile deep. Well. Inch wide, mile deep, darling.
Yeah, inch wide, mile deep. Okay, well, she's American, so she said it differently, okay? But it's getting the depth of your content. Of course they are. Everybody copies it. Look, somebody just did a 24-hour blab, and you invented it.
No,
and somebody else has suddenly done one. No, but somebody else has just done one all about being nice.
I know, I saw it.
Kind and loving. Okay, good. Good luck to them. It doesn't frighten. Okay, this is another thing. This is another thing about working the audience. Yeah, exactly. This is another important point about working the audience, that you have to be, and again, I have to mention Nigel Risner here, save your best for first. You give good stuff away right at the beginning of your speech and all the way through it, because the audience will think, oh my God, because a lot of speakers are frightened about giving away their content.
Oh, aren't they just? Aren't they just? It's all a case of almost secret squirrel, keep it here. And the one thing I have found with an audience, if the more you give to an audience, the more they trust and they like you, and the more they actually give back. And in actual fact, if you really truly want to work an audience, the more you give, you may not get immediately back, but the deferred gratification that comes later, and it can be anywhere from the next week to the next month to even 10 years later when they pick up the phone and say, hi, I remember you when. And that's what you're actually playing for, is the I remember you when. And I think a lot of speakers don't think years ahead. They think for the now. By the time I get off that stage, I need to have 5 people signed up to my training program.
Well, yeah, I agree. Remember, Cindy, the first time we met, actually, before we became really friends, never mind the other thing with you heckling, and you heckled brilliantly before then. It was long before then. I was doing a presentation, a 45-minute presentation for the Professional Speaking Association. At the time, it was called the Professional Speakers Association. And at the end of it, it changed the name from speakers to speaking. Anyway, at the end, you said, Fergus, you need to smile more because your mouth looks like, so you look really serious. You look very serious when you're on stage, so be careful about looking too serious. Okay, fine. And so I went and stood in front of my projector with a big screen, and I listened to some good music, and I spoke like this for about 20 minutes. I thought, oh, that's cured it. And then I thought, no. All I need to do is put light makeup in here to fill it in. Nice. I'm not wearing makeup tonight, but nice light colour.
What are you feeling
then? Nice bit of max factor, and then it hides the shadows and get the uplighters right.
Claire.
Okay, hang on. Remember when that was? That was about 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. 5 years after that, I was at a Christopher Howard event at Alexandra Palace. Notice I'm telling the story, I'm putting details in. This is the way to wow an audience. Give details so they can believe it, and it's true.
And it's your story, not somebody else's that you copied.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And during a meal break, I was outside, and people were the people who go to things like that, they brought their own salad, their own carrots. You know, I was thinking, where can I get a beef burger? Actually, no, I don't eat beef burgers. But they were all eating salady, veggie type stuff. Yeah, the grown-up, make yourself healthy stuff. Well, I'm doing that now because I bike a lot and I go to the gym a lot. Anyway, that's unimportant. Actually, no, it is important because I've dropped in another bit about me, you see. I've dropped in a fact about me that the audience go, oh, he bikes a lot. Oh, he goes to the gym a lot. So it's extra factors. Anyway, a woman came up to me during the break and she said, I saw you at the PSA 4 years ago. I said, yeah, did you? She said, yeah, it was brilliant. I remember everything you said. It was so good to learn that stuff from you. How did that feel? That felt fantastic because, as Cindy will attest to anyone, she'll just nod or she can say it. 2 years after a speech, let alone 3 months after a speech, most people remember two things, or one of two things, or both. One, how you made them feel, and two, what the food was like.
Yeah, absolutely. In actual fact, I'll go one stage further. Most audiences won't remember a speaker unless they spoke really, 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 really good and connected on something, or really, really, really bad. But either way, it's because they connected on something. So it's either really grated negatively or really touched a positive nerve.
Yeah, so it's all about an emotional connection with the audience. That's how to wow them. Now, a lot of people, Nigel Risner, I'm talking about, hate him. And a lot of people love him. And in the speaking world, as Cindy will attest, it's called a Marmite speaker. Whether it's Vegemite, Bovril, or Marmite, people either love it or hate it. There is nothing in between. You either think it's great or you think it's terrible. But that comes from people being very passionate about what they're doing and saying. And you either like it or you don't. And you have to be passionate about your topic. And there was a deceased friend of ours, Clive Gott. I saw him do a speech, 8 years ago. And he said, look, when you're doing a presentation to speakers, for example, so I'm using that as an audience for people to understand, right? You'll get a lot of them who think he's very good or she's very good. There'll be some who think he or she's very bad. And there'll be some others who think, I want to be up there instead. I could do it better. And they'll be the ones that hate you. Absolutely. And it doesn't matter. There'll always be some of those. Just ignore them. Because there'll always be some of those. And that's a very powerful message, I think. So when people want to wow the audience, you won't get everybody. It doesn't matter. You want the majority of the audience to get your stuff, whatever it is. Absolutely. And it's got to be related to them.
Well, in terms of Nigel Risner and some of the training that I was given, if you bank on the fact that 25% of your audience won't like what you're saying, and they won't like it because of either what you're saying, how you're saying it, or who you are. They've already made their minds up before you've even opened your mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
But similarly, there's also going to be 25% who've also made up their mind that they like you before you've opened your mouth.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the other 50 are those that are undecided. So I have spoken to so many speakers in the past that actually try to focus on the 25% that when they're standing on that stage and they can see somebody with their arms crossed or busy on their phone tapping away and they feel that they're disengaged from that person and they focus on that person trying to get them back in the room.
Yeah.
My argument to them is, well, why? You might as well carry on with those people that are with you in the room and not ignore them, because that's just damn rude.
Yeah. Interestingly, my brother is a program and project management consultant. I can't even say it properly.
But you can say Peter Pecker.
Peter Pecker. I can do that one. Yeah, but program and project management consultant. Anyway, he does a lot of speaking in his work, and he's much older than me. He's 3.5 years older than me, and he's been at it a long time. He used to work for the government, then for other companies, and he's now self-employed. You notice, you see, I'm doing a speech thing now that I'm giving some background into what I'm about to tell you so that you can believe the story, okay? Which is another thing you have to do in a speech. There's got to be background. I can't just... Okay, let me give an example. My brother said, and you think, what his brother said? Why do I care about what his brother said? But if I say, my brother, who does a lot of speaking, who's a program and project management consultant, whatever that means, has found that. Now everybody's interested. What's he found?
Yeah.
God, I want to know now. And I found the same thing now. Okay, and it's based on something Cindy just said. If you've got somebody sitting cross-armed in the audience with a frown, it could well be, and my brother found it and I found it, that they're just totally focused, and their way of listening to speech is very kinesthetic. So they close themselves in by crossing their arms, they close their eyes, they put their head down, and they've got a serious expression on their faces because they're so busy concentrating. I've had it happen to me. And the danger, if you're wanting to wow the audience, is to focus it on that person who's got their arms crossed and their eyes closed, who's focused and and afterwards they usually come up to you and say, oh, that was really good. They still have a frown because they are frowny type people. That was really good. I learned so much. And they'll probably remember the whole thing for weeks, maybe even months. And it might change them. But there's a tendency to think, oh, I want to please the people who don't like me. I really want them to love me. And that means you ignore the ones who do love you already and the undecideds. So you've got, like, 25, I'm not sure it's 25%, but let's say it is 25%. You ignore 75% of the audience for the sake of 25. What are the other 75% going to think about you? You will not be wowing your audience. You'll be wowing a quarter of your audience. That's not good. But you can pull them into the fold. You can pull them in by making them enjoy it. And they go, oh, actually, I quite like this.
Well, I had a bit of a laugh at the weekend. I actually had to go up to one of the chapters of the PSA.
Yeah.
And I gave a presentation.
Ooh.
Me, I'm not a speaker, but I had to give a presentation to speakers.
Okay.
And it was a lovely little chapter. They had a booker from Vistage. They had a booker from one of those big expo kind of places, all telling them how they book speakers, what they're looking for, what their audience is looking for.
Mm.
Yes, Ian, I was speaking. Oh. And good. I got up and I basically shot them between the eyes as to the reality of how big the industry is, what is expected. Yeah. I actually told the newbies, do not go to Vistage, as the reality is their stuff is going to go to the bottom of the pile because they're not ready. Yeah. And if they've done it too much or hassled them too much, it's even when they are ready, they'll never get back. Mm. And just sort of like telling them how it was really. Yeah. And I had that moment when I was looking around the room and I could see everyone's face was just like shock. It was like... Mm. And I must confess, I had that little bit of voice inside me go, oh no, what on earth have I done? No. I think I might have got it wrong.
No. So
I thought, and then the next bit of voice jumped in, which is, no, they need to know this, because if they really want to be a speaker, they need to understand that it's not something to do lighthearted. They either do it for a business, do it for a reason, and not just because they think it's a jolly good ego trip. Because as they're wasting my time, they're wasting the other guy's time. Yeah. And quite honestly, they're wasting their own time. They might as well go and join an Andram society. Yeah. And it was nice that afterwards I actually had some, the expo guy came up and he's shook my hand and said, you know, it is so nice in this day and age and with all these type of people around us to have somebody who actually speaks plain common sense. Yeah. Well done. They needed to know. Good. But it was just that whole moment of seeing the whole of the audience sort of like look at me and as if they were disconnected, as if there was...
Yeah, well, they're living in a dream. Something. That's why. They're living in a dream world, most of them. Now, I say to a lot of people that Toastmasters is very good for training beginners in the techniques and technology of speaking. And then once you're a good speaker already anyway, then joining the PSA is a very good thing to do to help you to develop your business with other speakers. No, Hillary, there's some good stuff there, and there's some great people there, really. It's great for building your speaking business. Don't be upset, really.
No.
It's a very good thing to go to, as to learn professional speaking, really. Really. I've left it. I was a fellow and I was on the board.
And I go back to
for
help.
Different reasons.
I actually go back to help.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my whole job there was actually to judge the speakers. They had 8 of them up, and they gave their presentations. Yeah. So I found that my role then became very useful, because it's like, right, I wouldn't book you because of this. And to another one, it was, I would book you because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And by able to give that amount of feedback to everybody, then everyone else got to see what bookers are looking for. So, for example, in my presentation, I actually said, look, there's only 12% of, talking about how to work with the audience and why you need to work the audience. In England alone, last year in 2014, there was 1.29 million events that took place over a 2-day period off-site with more than 10 people attending. Pick your jaw up. From that, 80% of those would have had some form of outside external speaker, trainer, team builder, after dinner, entertainment come in. So let's call that around 1 million. After that 1 million, 36% of those would have had some form of freebie, with 12% of them having a budget of over 100,000 set for speakers stroke speaking. So when I was giving information like that, and then you're looking at the audience and I'm saying, look, you've now got to start wising up. How much value is your topic? If you don't think your topic is worth £10,000, then stop trying to pitch at £10,000. If you think your topic is free, then what are you going to do to make the money? Because you're in that 36% of 36% area. After that, coming back to the speakers in the room at the PSA, I was actually chatting to the chapter's chairman and saying, well, you know, you do realise you actually have a potential person in your audience that is a possible 12%er. He turned around to me and said, oh, no, she's not. And I said, actually, turn her story around, separate it out. She's trying to raise money for a charity for £100,000 to raise for a house. Her story is good enough to go in front of Vistage and have the CEOs throw the money at her in one event. And he said, oh, well, when you put it like that, yes, she is. So if it wasn't for me going in and actually looking at it from the perspective of being a booker, then that chapter would have helped her, but it could only help her so far. Now I've put the idea in and showed them how to do it. That chapter will move heaven and earth to make her get there. And that's the power of PSA.
PSA is, some people in the PSA are very successful speakers. Some of them who aren't fellows and some of them who are fellows are extremely successful in their business model. Bye, Martin, and bye, Trevor. You've gone as well. I can't type because I have to like that to get my camera and everything set up. Anyway, there are people in the PSA who are very, very successful, and there are people who are not successful. But it's a club, really. It's a social club for people to get together, because one of the loneliest professions in the world is speaking. Because when I was an actor in the Royal Shakespeare Company and things like that, and I've just seen Henry V again a couple of days ago, which is why I couldn't blab yesterday. No, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Oh my God. And I watched somebody playing my part. So Wednesday, someone played my part. I don't think it was as good as me, but the rest of it was very good. And it was great to watch the play from front of house, because I never had before. I performed it 200 times, so I knew the play backwards. So it was really good, and it was utterly brilliant. So why did I mention that? In the PSA, there are lots of people who are very good speakers, and there are lots of people who are wannabe speakers who shouldn't even think about it. They should go and... No,
there's a mixture of the wannabes. There are the wannabes who could potentially be good. And then there are wannabes that actually they're just not going to get very far. Which is fine, but sometimes they get misled. And when you're coming back to how to work an audience, it's not fair to let some of these guys out onto an audience and give them false hope. Because by giving them false hope, you're setting an audience up to actually turn around and give them bad reviews, which actually crushes them even further. And that's not fair. That's setting somebody up for a fail.
Well, I'm going to have to say again, I can name names, I really can name names. He won't mind it. Neither of them, and one of them said, right, Richard McCann did a showcase for the PSA in Yorkshire, and it was very gory because of his background. I mean, he's never done anything gory in his life at all, but it was very gory, and his slides had blood running down them, basically. And he did this presentation, and Clive Gott phoned him up and said, give up speaking.
Really?
Richard, yeah, he said, that was rubbish, give up speaking. And he phoned me, Richard, and he said, Fergus, Clive's told me, and Clive's a very successful speaker, and he said I shouldn't be speaking. I said, no. At the showcase, which is one of the powerful things of PSA, you got lots of notes from lots of people. Look at all the different notes, not just listen to one person in the room who did or didn't like what you did. Yeah, get rid of the blood on your slides, make it a bit lighter, and focus on the center of the story. Mm-hmm. And he did. And the rest is history. And he's now very successful, as I said earlier. And you get a lot of things like that in the PSA, which is to do with showcasing, where you'll have a room full of speakers. The danger is thinking that everybody's right when they talk about you, which is why I mentioned, you mentioned as well, I talked about the Clive Gott thing about, you know, you have the bunch you think you're wonderful, the bunch you think you're terrible, and the bunch in the middle you've got to sway. And so you've got to take all their notes and put them in cum grano salis with a pinch of salt, mix them all up and think, okay, what do I really like? 60%. No, no, Hillary, it's not a club or group. No, it means you're a speaker. If you make 60% of your income through speaking, you are a speaker. You are a professional speaker because you're paid for speaking. Literally. Sorry. Hello? Really?
The question Hillary is saying, for those people who are watching on the replay, Hillary is saying that she makes 60% of her personal income through speaking. Do we think she should be part of a club group? There are actually a couple of schools of thoughts, because if you're looking for the audience and making sure you're on track and that everything you're doing, then yes, having some form of mastermind group to keep checking in with is always a good grounding. Whether it's a club or a group or an actual just a group of friends that you know and trust and can check in from time to time, a lot of the professionals will say that that's always good. With the club like her PSA, there are two reasons for joining it. Either you're at the bottom trying to get up to the top, or you're at the top and you want to give back. And that's another reason why some of the top guys do it. So they might have decided that when you're doing 60%, or some of the guys that have been doing 80%, and they've actually exhausted their network, especially when they've been doing things like in the financial sector, because you have burnout. You burn through your clients and your contacts. By joining a club, sometimes it just allows you to bounce over into something like a different sector, let's say like HR or teaching or the education. So they can be useful from that viewpoint. So never rule out anything. And I would always just go along and just check it out. And just be wary, because sometimes you could join the wrong group where you are actually the person who is the only one doing 60% booking. And they're actually all looking to you to suck the life out of you for your knowledge on how you're doing it. But
and you saying that, Cindy, about, I don't know, 7 years ago, I can't remember. Anyway, a very sweet Irish member of the PSA, who was once the president of the PSA, couldn't do a particular speech in Liverpool, near to where she lives. And she phoned me up and said, Fergus, would you like to do this speech for this... oh God, I did the accent as well, didn't I? So you probably know who it was. Anyway, she's a really good friend. I met her thanks to Clive Gott. Yeah, I met her at an expo. You see, that it's speaker. I met him at the PSA in Yorkshire, and he was doing a speech at the expo in London, and he phoned me up and said, "Oh, how do I get to the expo? How do I get to it from Victoria?" And I talked him all the way in. And then when we were in there, we talked a lot. And he said, "Oh, I'll introduce you to..." Never mind. Right. And this woman speaker said, "Well, Fergus, if you're as good as you say you are, I want your CDs." And of course, I had a lot of my CDs with me. So I gave her a full set of my CDs free of charge. Right. You see, you've got to have the backstory. For speaking, you've got to have a backstory. Okay. So about a year later, she phoned me up and said, I can't do the speech in Liverpool. Can you do it for me? And the fee is £1,500 for a 1 hour speech. Oh, no, 45-minute speech. I said, okay. I was living in Yorkshire at the time. So I booked the gig, and I went and did the speech for £1,500 and gave £300 to her, because it's the 20% rule, really. If a speaker gives another speaker a gig, you give them 20%. And I wouldn't have had that if it hadn't been for being a member of the PSA and having met this particular woman. And that's where you get the power, when it suddenly comes to linking with people in the organisation.
But as long as what you're doing and them referring is still right for the audience, because we're coming back to that, if somebody refers you in, you've got to make sure that you're still able to wow the audience and live up to the expectation of the person who's actually referred you in. And I think that's where people get wrong, is that I can build a good relationship with you. You might like me. And you might refer me because you like me so much. But it's still my job to make sure that whoever you've referred me to, that I'm still relevant and still going to be doing a great job. Because now I've got two clients. I've got two audiences. Not just the audience in the room, but you as an audience. Because you referred me, you're the unseen audience that will be watching me to make sure that I don't stuff up your reputation for recommending people in.
Yeah, exactly. And I was referred, it may have been the same person referred me to another organisation in Liverpool, but this particular one, it was for graduates and doctors who were going to travel all over the world, and they needed to be able to present to the people they met more effectively. So it was a perfect fit, absolutely perfect fit. And they enjoyed it. They didn't buy anything from me. They didn't buy any of my CDs, but they got the message I was giving them. And that was the important thing. So they went away after a 45-minute speech with a lot of understanding of how to communicate better with people as doctors all over the world. So I knew it was congruent with what I do. And it has to be. I've spoken for the dental industry. I've spoken for the financial industry. I've spoken for the legal industry. It doesn't matter. If your message fits in different industries, use it. And the only time, apart from that Academy for Chief Executives thing that went wrong, the only time it went really, really wrong was when I was doing a Skype call with the owner of a financial company and two of her finance directors. And I couldn't get her to do any audio exercises, voice exercises on Skype, because she'd have looked humiliated in front of the two of them. And I played them an audio which I find hysterically funny, and then I had to explain it to the three of them. And she went, okay. It was an absolute disaster, I tell you. If it had been in person, and if I'd known more about them, and preferably more people in the room, I could have got away with it. But three people on Skype, no, absolute disaster. So there are times when it goes wrong, you just have to shrug and think, okay, well, I failed.
Yep.
It's that simple.
And
we can all fail.
Get over it.
Yeah, get over it. Come on.
Get over it. Because the one thing that you can't do with the audience is actually go back and say, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. But you can be honest with them. But it's also making sure...
Another friend of ours, Paul McGee, his whole business is based on sumo, shut up and move on, which I think is great. Shut up, move on. And again, PSA, if it wasn't for PSA, I'd never met Paul. And believe me, I've ragged him badly. But he's a good bloke, and he's a very, very successful speaker. And so you learn things from watching professional, good speakers, and from just sitting in the bar and talking with them. And that's why it's a good thing, PSA. I don't need it anymore. That sounds very cocky, but I don't. But I spent 8 years there, I think, and it was very, very helpful to me. And yeah, go for it, really. Sumo, shut up, move on. And the book's out as well. The book is out. The book is out. You'll find it in Smith's. He's actually selling it quite well.
We're just waiting for Clarissa, I think, to get herself sorted out. You must remember Clarissa from last week.
I probably do.
If I get it correct. The relation. Well, she's got herself now as the relationship blogger.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Clarissa, you can get in. Don't mean that in a bad way either.
So anyway, also just to recap for some of the new people that have come into the room, one of the things that Fergus has been talking right at the very beginning is actually having a running theme and a running story, so that those that are with us have enjoyed the story throughout, with referring back to the original story.
Yeah.
And yes, Anthony can come in too.
Hi, Clarissa. Well, of course, as soon as I see her, I remember her. I'm very visual in that way. If she's beautiful, I'll remember her. Hello, Clarissa. Yeah.
Hey. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
Who doesn't want to be in a room with beautiful women? Come on, really?
She's lovely. She's a beautiful personality.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I have to put on my headphones. Okay.
I've got one, because the other one's broken, which is really annoying. It fell apart this afternoon, so I've only got one ear. And Cindy won't let me change it to another one.
No. Well, the last time he tried changing his technical equipment, we lost him for half an hour.
I know. Oh, I'm going to change them. I just need two ears, because I'm a right-eared person. Hang on.
Oh, no, he's gone. So anyway, just to finish off, so he was actually having a running theme, so you can keep saying, and that's the backstory you see. Yeah. So that those that have been in the room will know what he's talking about, and it just means that those that are coming into the room is going, oh, what's this about the backstory?
Yeah.
So
what I was talking about earlier was
engaged.
Yeah. What I covered earlier was how to blah blah blah, and I used the story of Fred or Mary or whatever, and you do a very, very short précis of a story you told earlier. So to give an example for people who've just come in and for people who've already been here for a long time, I talked about earlier on the story of a speaker who had a very powerful backstory from his life, and he was condemned by another speaker, and he still went on and did it because he spoke to me and I said, no, you've got so much potential as a speaker, don't give up, keep going. And he's now a very, very successful speaker. Okay, now I don't need to do the stories again, and don't need to go into detail again. That's just a headline version, a backstory version. However, when you are telling a story to an audience, you can't do that. You can't say, for example, let's say I was speaking to an audience and I said, I once had a client who was very nervous about speaking, and people underneath her ignored her all the time, but then I trained her and they didn't. Okay, why would you believe any of that at all? Right? Because there's no story there. You think, yeah.
Right on my head.
He's showing off. I don't believe him anyway. He's made it up. However, if you take also your stories, to wow an audience, you've got to have stories, but they've got to be true or based on truth. They don't have to be exactly true, but they have to be based on truth. The experience has to be true, not every single detail.
Well, Anthony, from what I remember, you're quite an experienced and established speaker, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I've done a few. I think the thing about a story, are we talking about stories? Are we talking just more about
stories? How to work the
audience. Wowing the audience.
Stories and stuff.
I think I had this conversation earlier today about speakers and engagement and flow, diction, grammar, the whole 9 yards. And I'm really finding a significant shift is starting to happen in the speaking business. And I use, let's use someone we all know, Gary Vaynerchuk, as an example. Okay, every other fourth word is F. Every other third word is you know. Yeah. But the guy, listen, I admire him. He is at 40, he's a sage. He's just done very well for himself. The guy makes between $3 and $5 million a year. He makes money speaking. Okay, he makes money speaking. Let's just put that out there. Now, from where I come from, and I'm the guy at like 16 years old watching Tony Robbins in the 80s. So I think that's the way to go. Zig Ziglar, the way to go. Brian Tracy, the way to go. Even Napoleon Hill, the way to go. Og Mandino. I'm like, I have to say my words so correctly. But I've learned as a speaker, you find your speaking voice. And what I'm leading up to, okay, so here's the climax, guys. I've just told you a personal story, so I've already engaged you.
Yeah.
But that's a true story. That's
and it's your story.
Personal to me. And I it doesn't come from here, it comes from here.
Yeah.
So I can use that story speaking to speakers. And I already have their attention not because I'm just animated, because I'm telling something they can immediately connect with. So to anybody who is speaking, whether it be a financial community or somebody, a nonprofit, use a real story that they can automatically connect with, and it's got to be real. Even if it's somebody met in the elevator, try to use something so personal, so relevant to you that any other human being can connect with. That's I always use a personal story, and it works. Whether it be my kid or it be my ex-wife, it could be something. Just kind of
I've got one of those. Yeah,
one of those. All right. Every time the phone rings, I told her. She called me today. She goes, Anthony, da, 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 da. And then I called her back. I go, hi, how are you? She's good. And she tells me this story. Great story. Really great. And then all of a sudden, my back pocket starts to get really hot. I'm like, this thing's burning. Where's the money question? She goes, well, I'm like, okay. So that's my story. Now that I have everybody all juiced up now, okay, I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay. Can I go back to what I was saying about, somebody came to me and they weren't very good, and then, okay, I'll do an example, a very short example of a story, believe me. And Anthony, you're dead right in everything you're saying. And I look forward to Clarissa talking in a minute as well. Yeah, you're really good. You're also very good. Right.
Thank you.
So I told a story just now, a brief précis of a story. Namely, somebody came to me who was being ignored by people junior to them, and then after training with me, they were not being ignored, okay? Which means nothing. That's not a story. However, I can flesh it out in about 2 minutes to give the details. A woman came to me who worked at a very, very high level in the government, in the civil service in England, and she was being ignored by people way below her. Now, luckily, she was at the same level as my brother, which was a sort of brigadier level in the army, right at the top of the biggest industry, the biggest ministry, the biggest government department in this country. And the boss, who was much higher, said, go and get some training. So she came to me for training, and after 3 sessions of training with me, the boss said, well, it's obviously working well, so we're going to start paying for it. So I did 14 sessions with her. And people who were 2 grades below her, which is a long way down, who'd been ignoring her, suddenly were listening to her and giving good feedback and not running out of the room very early. And she went to one of the very, very high level presentations, and they said, can you open it? She said, yes. And then they had to run the entire event. And that was her measure of success from training with me. Okay, that's the story. And it's a true story.
Great story.
And it's true. It's got to be true.
And it resonates with
absolutely
people. That's great.
But it's also making sure that the audience is taken on that journey with you.
Yeah.
And it has a positive outcome. Where if you are the type of person that are looking for the skills that they are needing, they then know that they're going to get that from you.
Exactly, yeah.
But it comes back down to, again, making sure you're actually positioned with the right audience in the first place, and actually you've done your homework and done the legwork and the grunt work, that you've got everything right for that particular audience that you're looking at and talking to.
Well, yeah,
Can
when
you
I was...
that question?
Oh, go on.
That's a good question. So it says, regarding the Gary Vee language, okay. There's no vodka in here today yet. It says, regarding the Gary Vee language, is it because the audiences are getting younger, and that is the language they have used or familiar with, where the boomers might be appalled? Well,
no.
Yeah, it's funny. No. It's a great statement. I think there are a lot of millennials that are maybe offended by Gary's speech, and then millennials who think it's the coolest thing because it resonates with them. You know, I have to go back to, everyone has a frame of reference. Like my frame of references are 5 people: Napoleon Hill, Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek, and a couple others. So I think I always have to start from my base of what I believe and what my values are. So I may not resonate with every audience, and you may not resonate with every audience. But for me, it's if you find your space, right? Find your space. Like when I speak to high school students, because I have a New York accent, they're like, "Oh, he's cool. He has a New York accent. Oh, he's really funny." So maybe my accent might get over a lot better. But when I speak to chief executives, I have to slow down and speak my words a little slower, and I have to be a little bit more speak with more intent. But I don't think there's really any room for F words. I really just don't, and that's just me. And Gary's earned the right to really do whatever he wants. Quite frankly, he's earned that right.
My observations. Sorry, don't mean to.
No, please do. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
In my observations, if you look at the world of comedy and comedians, they're a good benchmark as to what's going on with the audience. In the days when people were supposed to be more serious, the comedians were still swearing just as much back then.
Yeah.
Yes.
And some of them were horrendous. Back then, some of them were horrendously racist. I mean, they were fattest, racist,
Richard
anti-gay.
Pryor, George Carlin, you name them all.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor is one of my gods as a comedian. He's just wonderful. I forgive him anything. I really do.
Even so, you still have a section of comedians that still swear, still drink, smoke, do everything that is taboo on stage.
But they get away with it because they're brilliant. Yeah,
because they are niche.
Yeah.
They can do it.
Yeah, Rob is saying, but not the sales presentation.
Yeah, they're doing it all the personality, that's them.
Yeah.
But I can also guarantee that that person would not be right for every single sales presentation.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's coming back down to ensuring that you know the audience that you're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely.
And even that guy who swears every other word, if he's got it wrong with that particular audience, then I can guarantee he would have been stopped. And I know quite a few events in the past where comedians and people that have used the wrong language have been pulled off 10 minutes into their presentation because of it.
Yes, I agree.
And even a top comedian I know, they were asked for by a lawyer company. Yeah. And literally within 10 minutes of his presentation, the head went up, covered the microphone, and kind of said, "I'm sorry, but could you please stop?" And moved him off. And that was a personality from television. And it was like, but he's known for doing that. But not everyone actually knows that they do that, because if they don't watch television, they don't know that person that they've hired, and they're relying on the guy in the event management or the HR department or the marketing team who's booked them. Then you're relying on a kid fresh out of school who said, "Oh, who do I know?"
Well, also, to tell a story, and Cindy will know the speaker I mean, there's a speaker who's very miserable, and he actually does have depression. Okay, he's a comedian, stand-up comedian who's depressed. And when he
most of them have it. Most of them are that way. Most stand-up comedians have some. When you think about a comedian, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to make a really delicate point that is really something that people should think about. Every time you look at a comedian, comedians are there because they're dealing with some issues as a child. They were either sexually abused or mentally abused. They had parents that were divorced. I mean, all of them are really there to use their speaking opportunity, or the comedian, their opportunity to be a comedian. It's more about therapy. That's just that's a fact.
I'm just speaking about this particular one on your point, Anthony.
Okay.
And this particular speaker, who's now extremely successful, and his second name starts with the letter D, Cindy. Okay. Okay. Now he swears a lot on stage, and he's very depressive on stage, and he's actually very, very funny. I've never sworn on the radio, and I've done hundreds of programs. It's not part of my style. And what happened to create his career? He was a beginning speaker or comedian, right? Which is the same thing, which is why I watch a lot of stand-up. Anyone who wants to be a good speaker, watch a lot of good stand-up, and you'll be a much better speaker for it. Anyway, this particular chap was doing a speech, and it wasn't working at all. And he got really irritated, and he started swearing at the audience, and they laughed. So he kept doing it, and they laughed even more. And so he then took depressive and swearing into all of his presentations and became a huge star.
Yes, but that worked for him. And
I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I once did. Okay.
Let me just be a little bit controversial here, because
Please do, because you're sitting there with the stoic look like, we want you to talk. Come on.
Come in, Clarissa.
I'm poking at you, Clarissa. I'm sorry. Don't take it.
No. Stop being a TV hog, Anthony.
I know. I can't help it. I admit it, at least. I admit it.
Well, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a behavioral scientist and researcher and author of a very tongue-in-cheek relationship wellness blog called You'reJustADumbass.com, right? And because I'm a behavioral scientist, I'm make no qualms about this. A lot of the observation I've been making on Blab is purely experimental, purely for ethnographic study purposes. And one of the things that I have been looking at, within business analytics and crafting an audience and seeing what best practices are that are out there that are kind of related to the Gary V case study, right? It's, success drives authority, right? That's the key, right? So I think what happens is, whether you're Gen Z or Gen Y, what will speak to you the most is who has been successful. Whether they deliver the message filled with F-bombs or no F-bombs, if they have a formula that has created success for them, others will listen to it in whatever format it's delivered.
I agree.
Right? Now, I'm not saying that F-bomb, now, just like Fergus and Cindy and Anthony will say, and many of Rob and many people on the side chat that are saying, yeah, that doesn't work in sales presentations, that doesn't work in this environment. You can't go to a law firm and want IP and copyright and just, so yeah, everybody knows when things are appropriate and when things are not, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that we become more tolerant of things that we wouldn't normally have tolerated decades ago. Mm-hmm. And we've become much more tolerable of things now because we are living in a very digital world, right?
We're more informed.
And that digital world is truncating some of our human social interaction. So we're not challenged. This is as close as you're going to get to human interaction, right? This is all face to face. But we all have the liberty to just X out if we don't like the conversation. And that's the same thing with second, third, and first screens. You don't really challenge what you're saying because it's all delivered through, either text, it's delivered through some kind of electronic format where you're not really gauging the interaction that you're having, right? Yes. And on top of that, our society's become much more entrepreneurial. Gen Z and Gen X, they create apps. They have videos that become viral with 3 million hits. They're used to a world that they know a solution is out there, and they don't have to
reinvent the wheel.
Listen, I got graduate degrees all over my walls, right? I thought that was the route I had to take. Not Gen Z and Gen X.
Right.
Gen Z and Gen X are like, hey, dummy behavioral scientist, did you know I just created an app and sold it for $3 million? And I'm like, high five, baby, high five.
Yeah, but at the same time, Clarissa, given the focus is how to work the audience, there are some people. It was about 12, 13 years ago, and for 18 months I was a presenter on internet radio station, and we had 36 presenters in 18 countries. And I was I have to admit modestly, the top presenter. People wanted to watch and listen to anyway. And one day I made a joke which had a double meaning in it, right? A double entendre. 4 people wrote to me and complained. And they said, look, your shows are different from the others because there's never anything that I have to worry about my kids listening to. So I was very upset when you did that double meaning joke. Now, there were no swear words, and the children of the age of 6 or 7 or 8 wouldn't have understood the joke anyway. But I thought, okay, my image is that I'm the clean speaker, if you like. I'm the clean presenter. I'm the one people of any age can listen to and watch. thought, yeah, I like that one. I don't want to be down there in this small funnel, this small margin of speakers who only speak when they swear. And so how to work the audience? Well, you've got to think, does this audience want swearing? If they don't want swearing, you don't do it. If they do want swearing, fine, go in there and swear at them. And when I'm working with clients one-to-one, there are times when I swear, but that's one-to-one, and it's not in the first 5 minutes. It's not in the first 20 minutes. If I'm working with someone for 6 hours, then after 3 or 4 hours, I can think, okay, this person will feel better if I swear. They'll be more relaxed if I swear. And so then I do. And they do as well. But the rest of the time, I don't. And so the whole thing about swearing, the whole thing about audiences, wowing audiences, is thinking, again, we come back to the basic thing. Who are they? What do they want? What can you do? Which Anthony was talking about as well. Gary Watsit and Jack D, the English comedian, and a few other English comedians can swear as much as they like, and it works because the audience knows what they're getting from those particular people, and they focus on an audience that can take swearing, and they actually they work it into their presentations very cleverly. They don't just swear randomly. It's definitely clever the way they put it in. Another way to wow an audience and work an audience is to talk to with the audience, as in, let's say there's somebody in the front row that's I saw the Royal Shakespeare Company do it yesterday, and Tuesday, and it was brilliant. Wednesday. It was brilliant. Yeah, and we're talking Shakespeare here, right? And one of the actors was talking about stealing purses, and it's in Shakespeare's words. So he walked along the proscenium, and he bent down towards a woman in the audience and reached for a handbag, and then walked away again. He was able to use that to connect with the audience better, because everybody in the audience thought that is so funny, because he suddenly involved a member of the audience in his presentation. And there was I watched, there's a thing called Live at the Apollo in England, which is stand-up comedians all the time, and you have a main comedian and then you have two guest speakers. The main comedian is sort of MC. What people don't realize is that it's not a 1 hour program, it's actually a 3 hour program with the same audience. So they get 2 or 3 MCs and 6 speakers. So they go out of that building humming with brilliant speakers. So MCs talk about celebrities in the audience as they're starting the show. And they'll often say, okay, so when you did that show, did anybody watch or listen, whatever it is? Okay, no. Well, you're lucky then, aren't you? Because I don't listen to it. And the presenter, the celebrity presenter in the audience laughs their head off and shouts something back, and they get interactive with the audience. And they can get interactive with members in the front of the audience. Say, okay, well, you're about 20, aren't you? So why have you got that hairstyle? Does it work for you? And of course, the audience member will say, yeah, it works for me. Okay, is that your girlfriend sitting next to you, or your wife, or your mother? Oh, it's your girlfriend.
Your mother.
Yeah, and the audience members shout back, and they play with them. So the rest of the enormous audience think this person on stage is playing with the person in the audience, not against them, not at them, not to them, but playing with them. Yes. And so the psychology of that is that the people are enjoying sharing, and the comedian is taking huge risks. I mean, the risks they take are enormous when they start doing that with people in the audience and remembering their names and keep coming back to it regularly within their presentation.
So what it comes down to, it really comes down to your delivery method.
I love that analogy, you know, and I think, sorry to cut you off, Anthony. I love that analogy, and you know, I love it.
That's why I love that.
because replace comedian with blogger, with social marketer. You know what I mean? We're doing that, and we're not on stage, right? I mean, all of us, you know, like when I think about the topic, I work the audience. We're using comedians, but don't bloggers do that every day? Bloggers go out and they're trying to engage with their audience. Marketers, blabbers, everybody is trying to do the same thing, you know. And I'm not offended by anybody's format. Anthony, like you, I'm a native New Yorker. I mean, people tell me off as I get on a train. So, you know, so I'm not going to be offended by how the message is delivered. I care about who's sending the message and what they have demonstrated as efficiency, success, a formula that proves what they're saying, right? I mean, a lot of people talk about authenticity and storytelling being backed up by honesty. I think the best thing that you could do is, okay, really, you're creating a solution, right? You're identifying some kind of area that you see a need or demand for. I really want to hear how you created your solution. I don't care that you hauled a wheelbarrow over sticks and grass to get there, right? Like, like your grandfather's story. I walked to school with no shoes on.
We had no feet. We had stubs.
You know what I mean? So I think some of a lot of the discussion gets caught up in being authentic, being real to what you are. First of all, tell the truth. You're trying to make money and you're trying to sell your product. So like that's
everything
the first
you do
way,
is predicated on making the sale. I said that to somebody. I said
Sure.
I have to interject for a second. When I first came on Blab, I'm a business owner, so I'm not a social media strategist or digital marketing strategist. And everybody tells me, "Yes, you are, Anthony. Yes, you are." I'm like, "Well, you're on here, so you must be." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm a business owner. I'm here to make freaking money, And I know that sounds harsh, but that's the reality. Gary Vaynerchuk, everything Gary does is predicated on you buying something from him at some point. He's just leveraged himself so much that it comes across as he can give all this stuff away, but the guy's making money. The guy's making money. Let's be real here. I mean, I love him. I met him several times. Great guy, funny, always on. He's like 2'6". He's a tiny guy. I mean, I'm not tall. He's like tiny guy, really nice, engaging, funny, always on. But the guy does stuff because it's predicated on him making money. So, but my point is that if you could tell a story to get people to connect with people, your ability to sell that product or service is much easier. And I hate to use this term because I use it today, but it's effective. You want to lubricate the process to get to the sale. You really do. I know, because that was really bad choice of words. But you got to lubricate the process. Grease the skin. All right, I'll use another term that's not sexually. I don't know. You grease the skids or you lubricate the process, because at the end of the day, we don't make money by being just nice people. We make money by doing stuff and solving people's problems and giving them solutions to their problems. So I think if we rewind the tape, it all comes back to your delivery method and who your audience is. Okay, Gary will go into a university. He'll go into a millennial crowd, but he's not sitting in the boardroom of PepsiCo dropping the F-bomb. He's just not doing it. I don't care.
But then he said that, you won't know.
Yeah, well, I know Ingenuity.
That's the problem.
I know Ingenuity. She's a real traditional Indian woman who doesn't drop F-bombs. Just doesn't do that. So that's my point. That's just my perspective. I want to hear more about Clarissa's, so we're essentially lab rats, right? We're lab rats. Is that really what we are? I'm dying to hear your point of view.
But I have to say, Anthony and Clarissa, hang on. This is about how to work the audience, not whether we're Clarissa's lab rats or not.
Well, I just want to know I'm a lab rat. That's all. I'm curious to know.
But I got to tell you, working the audience,
that's perfect.
Everything's a lab rat. I hate to tell you, Anthony,
right.
Everybody's a lab rat.
Yes, it's true.
You're a lab rat on Facebook. You're a lab rat on Google. You're a lab rat everywhere, because algorithms run everything, and they're collecting data and refining that algo.
That's nice and positive, Clarissa. That's a nice positive thing. We're all algorithms. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Well, wait a
yes,
minute.
darling.
Fergus, why is that a bad thing? That's not a bad thing, Fergus.
It's a fact. That's what it is. And it's a very simple fact too. It's like it's provable. You can prove that fact.
So from your point of view, Clarissa, what would you say is a good way to make sure that your audience then is engaged from your observations? Because you've mentioned about authenticity is the one that's now being an overused buzzword.
Well, I honestly don't know the definition of how people use it, but I could tell you how I structured engagement across my blog, right? And I know that many people will be like, yeah, I cultivate a conversation. Yeah, but I used strategy and formula to guide how I set up each of my posts and how I was really addressing some of the need that I thought was out there, right? So I just started very simply with just very, very basic, what do people really want? You know, because we're talking about, you know, authenticity, how to speak to your audience, your story. And the reality is we're doing all these things because the sales formula has now changed, right? The sales formula can't be about sales any longer, right? We're all shunned out. You know, like Anthony just said, yeah, no qualms about it. People are trying to make money, but we're hiding that, yeah, this is the new sales pitch. Let me tell you my story. I walked across the desert to find a rock to write on. You know what I mean? And, you know, we're doing that because the sales formula has changed and the way that people are consuming has changed. So that's the biggest difference in behavioral economics and consumption patterns that are very different. People want value. They're not, you know, the day of loyalty and brand loyalty and being consistent with that brand. Now brands have to hustle. You know, Gucci did a brilliant thing where they're showing how the handbags were made, how they were constructing the clothing. Because now we're much more, because we're so digital, because we're so, you know, we're very information. We're a lot more researchers than we really think we are. When we want something now.
Hang on, I need to come in here, Clarissa. You talking about Gucci. I saw a documentary which showed that Gucci, Chanel, lots of the big companies, they all have their handbags and shoes and things made in Chinese factories, and they're all the same factories. All they do is change the badge, literally. So you've got the same factory making stuff for Gucci, for D&G, and for Chanel, and all the other big ones, Cardin, and so on. And they have like production lines, and somebody sends them the design of a particular pair of boots or a handbag or whatever, and they just run it off the production line and stick the badge on, and then it's branded as, oh, this is very special. And I've got a friend who used to work for Minorco, which was run by the De Beers company, the De Beers family, and De Beers literally rule the world of diamonds in South Africa. And they have got thousands and thousands and thousands of diamonds in drawers in the company. And they let them out at a very, very low rate to keep them. I mean, diamonds used to be laughed at because they're colorless. You know, who wants a diamond? Rubies are nicer. Emeralds are nicer. Topazes are nicer. No. They said the diamond is the best and it's the rarest. Well, it isn't the rarest. And so they kept them in drawers, and they give a value to them by market perception of rarity, of scarcity, and they only let them out in very small numbers, and it works. It's worked for, like, diamonds are a girl's best friend. No, they're not. Well, Pierre,
time out. Ladies, are diamonds your best friend? Thank you.
Yes. Well, whether they outsource, I'm not sure. I can't really speak to their supply chain. All I could say is what luxury brands started doing, and that was video casing how luxury comes to be, because consumers were no longer like, I love Gucci, right? Like to use your example, Fergus, if you covet Gucci, you also covet Chanel, you also covet Hermes, you also, so the idea of, oh, this is luxury, this is exclusive, this is what I have to own, became much more competitive in a place where consumers now become researchers, right? So say somebody does stumble across that article that says, all these luxury companies are really outsourcing their product and all they've done is interchange this. Well, now they have something larger to prove to consumers that their handbags are not that their products are still held to the quality that they are.
Cindy's saying very wisely, is this how to work an audience, or is this how to market something to the world?
No, that's Dutch.
We've slipped well off topic with this.
Not really. I can get that this is still an audience, and you still got to work the audience, whether it's the marketing or not. But it's kind of relevant, and thank you very much for bringing us back on topic, Fergus.
Cindy, why don't you modify the topic a little bit and say how to engage / work an audience? Because work an audience could be a little generic. I think when you say engaging is working, but maybe you define it a little bit better, you might get a little bit more buzz from the topic.
No, that's two. No, Anthony, that's two different versions of the same thing. It's confusing. Don't ever give people two chances. Give them one. Give them one. So, trust me.
I will try and change it. So topic is, and we're going to change it, ladies and gentlemen, to
how to engage your audience. How about that? Your audience.
That's good.
How to engage.
That's why I got a C- in my marketing class. And I got an A+ in television hogging. Actually, I created the class and gave myself an A+. How you doing?
Yeah, Dutch, the reason engage is generic and it works well. If you use words like influence or persuade, that can be very negative to some people because they think you're tricking the audience, whereas engage means connecting with. So it's how to connect with your audience, but engage is a shorter word. It's like how to, the book Influence, Cialdini's, Professor Robert Cialdini's book Influence, which is utterly brilliant. It's absolutely wonderful. And I've read it. I've read the version 4 and version 8, both of them, and they're different. Well, it's only different because there's lots more feedback in them. In the version 8, there's lots more audience feedback, if you like. You read half the book and think he's supporting all this horrible stuff, and then the second half of the book, he attacks it. However, if I talk, when I make CDs, okay, how to influence with your voice is one of my CDs. Influence is okay. Persuade, engage with, what? How to engage with your voice? No, I can't do that. So I have to be very careful with the titles of all my CDs so that people can get the message, like unlock your vocal charisma, not be more charismatic and engage and work with people to be more charismatic. You've got to keep it short and sharp and powerful. And believe me, I've studied headlines a lot.
It's all about headlines. It's all about headlines. It's catchy.
Yeah. Ted Nicholas is the expert on headlines. Ted Nicholas. And also that comes to with audiences when you're doing a speech, that if the title of your speech is good, then you
can charge more.
You can charge more, certainly, yeah. Like, I could call myself a voice coach. Okay, it's only a tenth of what I do, actually. I could call myself a voice trainer. Or I can call myself a communications consultant. And people pay me a lot more under communications consultant, which actually is more excuse me, much more accurate. Because I teach people, I'm a consultant on how to speak better in all sorts of ways, whether you're writing something, body language, storytelling, presentations, voiceover, all those things. So this is mainly not about written stuff, and I appreciate what you're saying, Clarissa, but it's when your audience is in front of you visually or auditorily rather than blogging. Because the reason I'm saying that is there are 3 ways of writing a presentation. 1, you write it for silent reading, which is what you do, Clarissa. 2 is you write it for being read out loud. And believe me, I've recorded a lot of audiobooks for lots of companies. And sometimes when they're written for silent reading, it's very difficult. Like, for example, let me give you a line. I do not want to tell you too much about this topic at the moment because it is a bit difficult. Right, that's written for silent reading. The written for reading aloud is, I don't want to tell you a lot about this topic at the moment because it's difficult, right? And the bullet point version is topic difficult.
Give me the bullet point.
Yeah, and you've got 3 things, 1, 2, 3, yeah? And so I appreciate, Clarissa, people love your blogs and they're obviously brilliant, but that's a totally different type of audience from the ones I work with. Now, you are heavily into psychology of communication in a completely different way from me. And you'll have read, I'm sure, Maxwell Maltz's Psycho-Cybernetics, and you'll be expert on psychoacoustics and psycholinguistics, because that's my field, those lots. And they're all to do with communications. And even, dare I mention, Alfred Korzybski, Science and Sanity, 1937. Some people it was 1947. No, it was 1937. A chair is not a chair unless you think it is. Bless him. So this is all about very advanced communication. From that came, by the way, CBT, and in the end, NLP, all came from Count Alfred Korzybski, a Hungarian absolute genius. And Clarissa is nodding and nodding and nodding. It's a very heavy book, and it's utterly wonderful. But when I stand up to speak, I'm aware of these fields, and I use them when I'm doing a presentation. And that's something I can't go into in depth now. If people want it, they better write back to us about engaging your audience, and I'll go into more detail another time about engaging the audience using language, using sentence structure, using storytelling, how to write a good story, how to captivate an audience, and even body language if they really want it. But it's to do with the auditory speaking as opposed to written speaking. I'm sorry, Clarissa, I know your stuff is great. I really do. So I'm not dissing you at all. But this particular blab is focused on engaging your audience that's in front of you, whether it's on television, radio, or in a theatre.
But it'd be nice to actually come back and do a blab on the writing, because that is another big part of the audience of speaking, because of content, writing the books, product development, that's all written, and capturing it in a different way to get to the audience in a different way as well. So be lovely to sort of like have something with the Fergus and the Clarissa sort of like talking about the behaviour and the blogging and that side of things. Yeah,
definitely. That would be another great one to do. I just want to attack Dutch. Oh,
be gentle.
In a nice way, Dutch, I know I'm going to prove something. Dutch. Oh, I hope you're listening. Okay. You say voice is a very small part of... Yeah, come on then. See, Dutch is the bring it. Okay, Dutch. Dutch, are you a boy or a girl? Doesn't matter, actually. It doesn't matter. I'll just call you Dutch. Anyway, imagine, okay, boy. Okay, Dutch boy. I should have known. Bring it on. Yeah, bring it. You must be a boy. Okay, Dutch. You imagine you're in a bar, okay? And see, I'm being nice, Cindy. You're in a bar, and the most beautiful woman in the world, which could be Cindy, it could be Clarissa, and let's face it, I can't say to Cindy that she's hot because she's a good friend of mine, but Clarissa, you are seriously hot as well. Okay, right. So anyway, Dutch, you're in a bar, and you see across the bar your favourite pin-up film star, okay? Male or female, I don't care. You don't need to say. You could just think of them. Your absolute favourite. And they're looking at you, and they're beautifully dressed. They look so, so good. And they look at you and say, oh, Dutch, come over here. Hi, Ilya. Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have spoken then. I've interrupted my story. Hi. Hang on, Leanne. Hang on. I've just started a story, Leanne, darling. Right. So, Dutch, you're seeing that girl across the bar from you, and she says, hi, Dutch. Eileen. Oh, do you? Okay. That's complicated. Okay, next week we can do storytelling, because I've just done 2 years with the Open University on creative writing, and I've got distinctions 2 years in a row, so that should work. Okay, anyway, let me get back. Dutch. Okay, go back to Dutch. Sorry, Dutch. Sorry I got interrupted by myself. Right, so your favourite film star, male or female, is in a bar opposite you and looking wonderful in perfect clothes, hair all smart, shoes smart, everything, and they say, hey, Dutch, would you like to give me a drink and come out on the town with me? In their usual voice. You'll probably say, oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Well, I don't know which accent to do, because you might be Dutch, which goes, oh. Anyway, it might be American, so, oh, my God. Or it could be English, oh, yeah. Anyway, so you will say yes.
Or you can be from New York and say, oh, damn, she's hot.
Damn, yeah, she's, she or he is really hot. Oh, my God, yeah. Oh, sorry, I slid slightly into California then. Anyway, so you imagine that one. Okay, Dutch? Right. Now take the same situation, but they're wearing really ragged clothes, okay? Their face is a bit dirty, their hair's mussed up, and they say, hi, Dutch, would you like to buy me a drink and come out with me later? I think you'll probably still say yes, as long as they don't smell too much. You'll think, okay, I'll definitely have a date with that person. Right. Now let's go back to the original. This is number 3. This is the end of it, Dutch. This is the end of it, I promise. No, not a tart. Oh, you like tarts, do you? Okay, fine. So they can be in smart clothes or dirty clothes, right? You want them anyway, okay? Your favourite film star woman, please, is not a tart. Really is not. Just very, very highly paid for getting naked on films, I suppose. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. Sorry. Last one, everybody. Stage 3, okay? Stage 3. Okay, you go back to them looking absolutely perfect. I haven't lost a thread at all, Dutch. The same person, looking wonderful, right? Dutch, stop being insulting. Listen, man. Right, okay. So the same person, looking wonderful, looking across the bar at you, and they signal to you, say, "Hi, Dutch, you want to buy me a drink and take me out later? Yeah, right." Okay. All I did was change the voice. Would you go out with number 3? Because I know you would 1 and 2. That's the power of voice. Yeah, I think I proved my point. Imagine Marilyn Monroe with the voice of Olive Oil. Would it work? No. No, they. Well, social classes, Dutch. Oh no, it wasn't.
No, actually, I'm going to just slightly back you up here, Fergus. I don't often do it.
No, you
but
don't.
if you actually, but if we go back to the silent movies and then when they became talkies.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't there a classic case of about only 80%? Was it 20% of the actors and actresses actually made it through?
Maximum,
because
yeah.
The voice and the way and the perception of what this person spoke and sounded like did not actually match up to when she came through, and they could actually hear them.
Correct, absolutely right. I should have mentioned that one. It would have been much quicker, wouldn't it, than telling my story? But yeah, it's true. It's true. They just disappeared. Their voices were terrible. I mean, yeah, some of them had other reasons for failing, but yeah, that was what happened. And some of them were brilliant.
It's all right. Calls have just come through. Did you want to jump in quickly, Dutch? Just come and join us and say hi.
Come and get insulted in person, Dutch. Or insult me in person.
Insult you in person.
Well, that's the thing about hecklers, you see. See, he was a heckler on the side, yeah? And so I worked with his heckle to... Okay, everybody, I hope engaging your audience. Did you notice Dutch was disagreeing with something I said, and I used it to develop a theme? Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly what we were talking about earlier, that when you actually get somebody,
do you notice?
Got 2 ways.
Yeah, that's
I must confess, I kind of started ignoring some people.
No, you don't. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
You engage them.
I can engage with some people, and then there are others which is like
you engage with nearly everybody, and yeah, everybody. No, I'm not going to say. I was going to give you a compliment, Cindy, but I decided not to.
That's okay. I'll take it out on you later, darling.
I know you will. That's a scary thing. Why didn't you compliment me? What was it going to be? What were you going to say?
Anyway, whilst we're waiting for Dutch to make his way in, have you any kind of final points? Oh, that's it. What do you look for when studying comedian?
Jamalina, that's a wonderful question.
It's JR, I believe.
Oh, JR.
And he also asked a very, very great question earlier, which is about storytelling. And that's him who's saying about the like his storytelling or even books that we could recommend. So, he comes. Touch.
Okay.
So don't worry about that.
Oh, I can see him. Yeah, I can see he's a troublemaker. I can see Dutch is a troublemaker from his picture.
So whilst he's coming in,
really
JR.
laughing so hard.
Yeah, hang on, JR. Right, hang on a sec. Books on how to do comedy. I don't know books on how to do comedy. I would suggest you watch the stand-up comedians who are very, very successful in America and England, and watch and analyze what are they doing. And you'll find they're all doing virtually the same thing, that they've got a pattern. And what you've got to see is the pattern, as in storytelling with back referencing. And also, there's a thing that Doug Stevenson, who wrote Story Theatre, talks about, and his whole thing is Story Theatre, Doug Stevenson, American. And he said that comedy equals somebody saying apples, pears, and plywood.
Okay.
Okay. What that means is you set people up, you misdirect them, and then suddenly there's a twist. That's what comedy is. There's a sudden twist at the end.
Yep.
I will throw in there. There's a on comedy. There's a couple of people over here. There's a comedian named Judy Carter out of LA, I think. She does speaking too, but she wrote several books on comedy, stand-up comedy. There's another one, I can't remember who wrote this, but it's Humor from the Podium. That was out a few years ago, but I have both of them. And Judy's on Facebook and Twitter, I think. She does comedy classes out in LA.
Do you want to type the name in the message bar so that JR could? That'd be lovely.
Yeah, go ahead. That'll keep me quiet while Fergus goes ahead and rips me apart. I was laughing because I think you missed the part when you asked me about the movie star coming across. I said I would pass out. If that happened to me, I would pass out.
Well, all three times?
No, on the first one. It's a movie star.
Oh, okay.
The movie star.
It's all right.
And then the middle class, and then the ragged one. That's the middle class, or the ragged one was kind of when I put the part. And then anyway, I was watching Cindy and Clarissa, and they were laughing because they were reading what I was saying, and you weren't, which was very funny.
No, I was stuck in my story, mate. I was stuck in my story. I don't read anything when I'm in a story. Also, JR, what you don't realise, if it's a movie star, the dirty clothes and the ragged clothes were just the costume they were wearing for a film they were making. They were still clean underneath. It was still a very, very wealthy movie star, and you ignored them because they were wearing ragged clothes. Ooh, more fool you. And when they were doing the wrong voice, Judy Carter. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's the medium, the book.
Yeah. Okay.
That he was just referring to. So for JR, that's great. So.
Well, anyone who calls themselves JR has got trouble, haven't they? Let's face it.
Well, I will tell you why I came in here, because the engage the audience. Engage is a very loose word, and I like specifics. Work the audience, which is a totally different thing. And I don't have that kind of work the audience. You don't get to see that many live performers, and I think England does a better job of that than the U.S. does, because you have a history of, you don't call it vaudeville, but you call it something else over there, where you go and you watch speakers and performers on stage. We don't do that unless it's a major concert or comedy clubs grew up, but they're not nearly like a mass performance.
We just call
I've seen on movies.
We just call it stand-up. We call it stand-up here.
Well, I mean, we call it stand-up, but don't you have music halls or something
like
that?
No, not for the last 70 years.
That's old school.
No, not for 70 years. We don't have music hall. No, really.
No.
Okay, well, all I see is movies, so I've never been there. So I have to ask.
No problem. No problem. We're pretty much the same as America, just slightly behind, but not by many years. And
I'm not so sure about that, because you have such elegant, what's the vernacular? That and accents, no doubt. Mine is roughened by Texas and Alabama, so it's going to be a very different sound.
No, it's a good accent, though.
Says who you are.
Thank you.
Says who you are, JR. That's good. It's warm, rich.
England is exactly the same as every other country. There's going to be regional accents that even people from the same country cannot understand. So I think there are a couple of very strong accents that I can't understand, from the guys from the north to some of the guys from down the south. So, but I grew up with a mother that every time I took on some local colloquialism, she would correct me. And it was annoying. I was not allowed to say, nah. It had to be no. And I do find myself with my kids now saying, when they're saying quiet, I said, no, there's a T in it's quiet. And I'm actually correcting them. So it's taking out the accent because of just making it more easier on the ear to be be heard.
No,
It's
not.
Down the country.
No, actually, no, it's not.
Just being a snob.
No. You're teaching your children standard Southern English. Okay, that's its title, and that means you use all the vowels and the consonants and the affricates and the fricatives. So you're actually using them all. So you're just helping them to elucidate better. That's all. That's all it is.
Okay.
And I could go into deep Scottish if you want. It's very easy to go into Glaswegian. And I can do into Hibernian, Aberdonian. I can go in there. It's very hard to go to Northern Ireland without slipping back into Glasgow. But you can go into Northern Ireland if you think, and I can do very lilting Irish. And believe me, having lived up there, I can do North Yorkshire very well. Now then, happen.
So do you actually change your accent depending on the audience that you're talking to then?
Yes.
To keep them engaged?
A little bit, yeah. And I'll drop in local references.
Local references is fine, but actually...
No, tonal references. So, like, let's say I was doing a speech in Glasgow and I would suddenly go, yeah, I saw you outside, didn't I? Right, and they go, what? He's doing Yorkshire. I said, that sounded Yorkshire, didn't it? And they go, yeah. I said, okay, do you want me to do Glasgow? Will that make it better for you? That's it, I've got them then. Or shall I just go back to English? And they say, yeah, no, do English, please, just do English.
So we can't.
So Fergus, are you a voice? You're a voice coach. I know you're getting close to time, so
yeah.
Tell us. So you're a voice coach, but you're a presentation person as well.
Yeah, I do voiceover work, and I train people to use their voices. I do a lot of public speaking, and I do training, basically, lots of training in all sorts of stuff about how you get on the stage. And it isn't just your voice; it's your stories you tell, how you tell them, the words you use, how you get people in. Oh, thanks, Clarissa. I love you to bits, and I look forward to you being with us again. Really.
Oh, well, she's always welcome to come back in.
Yeah, and I can always stop her when I need to if she goes too much off topic. But I love Clarissa. She's very, very clever as well.
Oh, absolutely.
She's a very clever girl. And JR, if you went to Hollywood now, they'd probably drag you into the studios and make you a star very, very quickly because you've got the look and the voice, don't you think, Cindy? He's got that.
Oh yeah, I think he does, no doubt.
They'd go for you.
He's making money the hard way.
They'd go for you.
Oh, dear. So anyway, where we were? Back to
towards the end, I think, Cindy.
Yeah, I'm going to kick out. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the reading. I grew up in sarcastic West Texas. I'm totally fine with it.
One thing before you go. Your first name, is it actually Dutch?
My first name is Bennett. I gave myself Dutch because I hated Bennett. On the 7th grade playground, Bennett is not the name you want to have. Trust me. If you just kind of think down a little bit like a 7th grader, and you'll understand why I did, and I've never liked it ever since then. So I gave my own name to myself when I was about 38,
right.
Which is really fortunate because most people like it.
Okay, well,
you were in 7th grade at the age of 38.
I was in 7th grade when they would use Bennett incorrectly.
And you decided at the age of 38, which is only a little bit after 7th grade, to change it.
Yeah, okay. It was a few years later.
Slow change.
I'd done radio with, you can imagine, I did radio with this accent.
Gorgeous.
And they had told me to go and work on my diction and the oral presentation, and they didn't tell me how to fix it. So coming out of radio, we all have our own personas on the air personas, and I just said, okay, if they can all run around with fake names, I can too, and
it's a good one though. JR Dutch, yeah, it's a good one.
Excellent.
And thanks for coming in and putting up with me ragging you, really.
That's
and thanks
lovely.
for demonstrating.
No problem.
And
No
good it is to have a heckler. Thanks, JR.
Okay.
Respect.
Well, I'll tell you what then, shall we leave it here for now and pick up some of the points, because I would like to come back and recover the topic that JR has talked about with the storytelling.
Yeah.
And I know Clarissa will have lots of lovely viewpoints as well from the blogging point, because that's one thing with speakers have got to be mindful about is their style of communication and how they write their topics, how they write their written material to sell themselves, i.e. their profile building, the website building, their doing their books, etc. So it'd be nice to try and sort of like bring it all together as that kind of format.
Yeah, I agree, because there are, I mean, how to engage your audience, how to wow your audience, how to influence your audience, how to persuade your audience, all different words for a sort of set of concepts which are very, very related. And it was fabulous having Clarissa in, because she does so much written stuff and she's into all the psychology very deeply and she knows her stuff backwards. And so it'd be great to have her in one about how to engage. And streaming video is going to change things, definitely, very much. Oh, look, yeah, my green screen. Yeah, I rolled it down. Yeah.
Thanks, Damien.
And so there's how you sound, how you look, how you move, stories you tell, and how you tell them. Those are the 4 main things when you're doing a presentation to engage your audience. And we can do lots on that. And isolating it into different sections like storytelling or body language or voice. And of course, we've got the technology. We've already done that once. If everybody's missed it, you just have to go and listen to the old blabs that we've done. So there's different ways, different levels in which you can connect with your audience every time you're on stage. And I can give away more free stuff, which people pay me serious amounts of money per day. Not every day, but they do when I have full day trainings. And when I do speeches, I train this stuff. And so people can get it here on Blab free. How ridiculous, but they can. Over to you, Cindy, to wind up.
Well, thank you for all the lovely tips that we've seen and heard about engaging with the audience. And it's not just a straightforward getting on stage and talking at them. It seems to be there's a whole load of dynamics going on before you actually even get to the stage that you've really got to keep and be mindful of. So what we will do is come back and we'll also explore a little bit more on the stuff that we do before we get to the stage.
Good point. Oh, yeah, preparation for presentation. Prep for pres.
Prep for pres. And body language. Well, body language, we're working on that. We'll have a special blog for body language, won't we, Fergus?
I'll have to stand up, won't I? But never mind, I can.
I was thinking about also your good friend joining us.
Oh, yes, my good friend, the man who invented the term, my good friend.
Yes.
Yes, we'll have to get him in at some point. Yeah,
absolutely.
He broke several ribs doing jiu-jitsu a week ago, so he's a bit slowed down, but he's willing to come in.
Absolutely. So we will definitely highlight that one before we get to it. We won't just drop it on the night. So
no, it's a big star, so that one will be well trailed. Really will be well trailed. Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Well,
okay, darling.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night, everybody. Love you, Clarissa.
Thank you.
Bye, JR. Bye.